A U.S. Marine shoved her in the mess hall. Unaware, she outranked everyone watching. A shove in the mess hall, a man asserting his dominance, a woman standing still, unshaken. No one could have guessed she outranked everyone present. In the blink of an eye, the line between fear and authority blurred. This is a story about strength, respect, and the quiet power of being unyielding. The mess hall was noisy, trays clattering, voices blending into a dull hum. Christine Harper moved steadily, her sneakers whispering across the polished linoleum. She wasn't looking for trouble, just lunch, a brief moment of normal in a life that rarely afforded it. The sergeant in front of her, a mountain of muscle and arrogance, decided otherwise. He shoved her aside with a sneer, testing the boundaries of civility. Christine's body swayed slightly but never wavered. Her hands gripped the edge of the stainless steel tray counter, fingers tightening in controlled patience. Around them, Marines froze mid-bite, sensing the tension but unsure if they should intervene. Christine looked at the man, Sergeant Mason, his chest puffed, eyes sharp. "This line isn't for civilians," he barked, voice echoing. She met his gaze evenly, unflinching, a calm radiating that felt heavier than his aggression. The ponytail bounced slightly as she straightened, scanning the room, not for allies, but to assess the space, the exits, and the people watching. The air felt thick with expectation. Silence had a weight, and Christine Harper carried it like armor. Sergeant Mason moved closer, chest pressing against hers, aiming to intimidate. "You think you belong here?" he growled. Christine's eyes softened, almost imperceptibly, a quiet sadness lingering behind the steel of her stare. She remembered the mornings before dawn, the cold, the discipline, the endless preparation for moments like this, the kind of training that demanded patience, strength, and the ability to command without raising your voice. She didn't respond with anger, just a simple, "Sergeant, I'm in line. It's open to all hands until 1:30. It's 12:45. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Mason's lips twisted, laughter escaping, harsh, barking, cruel. He looked around at his small audience of juniors, smirking. Christine's calm, steady stance created a tension in the room that his arrogance couldn't break. She didn't speak louder, she didn't shout. She just existed in that moment, a quiet force refusing to bend. Every muscle, every breath was under control. She didn't need to move. She didn't need to yell. She only needed to be. The other Marines shifted uneasily. Some leaned back in their chairs, forks frozen midair, unsure if they should intervene or remain spectators. There was a long history here, a chain of command that nobody wanted to break. Mason's sneer deepened, his chest puffed with superiority, but Christine's quiet defiance began to unbalance him in ways he didn't understand. Her eyes swept across the hall, noting the layout, the spacing, the subtle ways she could protect herself if needed. Memories flickered unbidden, dust-filled courtyards, screaming mortars, and men depending on her calm voice to survive. In that flash, she remembered guiding a young corporal through chaos, steadying hands that trembled with fear, speaking words that commanded life. Those memories weren't just memories, they were a shield, a reminder of the authority that came from experience, not rank, not chest size. She exhaled slowly, letting the tension settle like a stone into the room. Mason, sensing nothing had broken her, reached again, more forceful, but Christine's stance never wavered. Every eye in the hall followed this silent confrontation, waiting for her to falter. She didn't. Christine's voice finally broke the silence, soft but authoritative. "You are blocking the line, Sergeant. Step aside." No one had expected such composure. Mason's arrogance faltered slightly. He hadn't encountered someone who refused to react the way he anticipated. Around them, the mess hall was still. Junior Marines exchanged glances, recognizing the tension, the imbalance between perception and reality. Christine adjusted her footing, grounding herself, every movement precise. She wasn't intimidating. She was calm, deliberate, a reminder that authority was earned, not assumed. Her hands remained ready to grip the tray counter if necessary, but they were relaxed like a predator confident in its power. Mason sneered, stepping closer, but Christine's icy gaze met his, unyielding, carrying the weight of someone who had seen the edge of chaos and returned. "Step aside, Sergeant," she repeated, voice low, each word deliberate. The room's tension was almost audible. Marines froze mid-action, sensing the subtle shift. The dynamic had changed. What started as a confrontation had transformed into a silent lesson in power, patience, and presence. Christine wasn't loud. She didn't need to be. She simply existed in command. A young lance corporal, Diaz, watched from across the hall, a half-eaten sandwich forgotten in his hand. Something about Christine seemed familiar, a ghost of a memory that prickled at his mind. Her ponytail, the calm in her eyes, the subtle way she held herself, it was uncanny. He squinted, trying to place her face, tracing lines he'd only seen in photos during induction briefings. Slowly, realization dawned. His jaw went slack. Christine Harper, the deputy commanding general for the entire base. Not a civilian spouse, not some lost visitor. Her authority dwarfed the man confronting her. Diaz's heart raced as he realized the implications. Mason's arrogance was about to meet consequences that would ripple through the hall. He fumbled for his phone, knowing he needed to alert higher command before things escalated. Christine, unaware of the recognition unfolding, maintained her stance, serene, controlled. Her eyes didn't flicker. Her breathing didn't quicken. She simply waited, calm as the storm she had survived countless times before. The tension in the room had thickened to a palpable force, every Marine sensing the moment before revelation, the pause before justice. Silence, heavy and expectant, filled the space around them. Mason's smirk faltered as Christine's calm authority began to seep through the chaos. He hadn't expected hesitation in the room or recognition. His junior Marines exchanged nervous glances, some shifting in their chairs, others gripping trays tightly. Christine's presence didn't shout, it resonated. Diaz's hands shook over his phone, fingers hovering as he prepared to dial the higher-ups. He couldn't let Mason escalate further. Mason stepped closer, still trying to dominate physically, his voice raised now, cracking under the tension. "Move, or I'll have MPs escort you out," he spat. Christine's eyes, steady and unwavering, caught his. In them was the weight of experience, of responsibility far beyond his comprehension. Every shove, every barked order he attempted, collided with invisible walls of discipline and history he could not penetrate. He had seen real fear, real danger, and had survived it. He had only ever played at authority, confusing aggression for control. The mess hall felt smaller, the air heavier. Every Marine could feel the shift. Mason's arrogance, once a shield, was now a liability. Christine's patience wasn't weakness, it was command, slow, deliberate, and inevitable. Christine's mind briefly flickered to the dusty, sun-bleached courtyard in Ramani. The mortar rounds, the screams, the smell of gunpowder, and the faces of young Marines relying on her guidance. She remembered a corporal trembling in shock, a faint stream of blood running down his arm, and her calm, commanding voice cutting through the chaos. It had saved lives. Now, in the mess hall, the memory returned with sharp clarity. Mason was a trivial storm compared to that battlefield. Her fingers flexed subtly, gripping the edge of the counter, grounding herself in the present while channeling the authority she had earned through experience. The room had quieted completely. Even the clatter of trays and chatter had been replaced by the silent pulse of attention. Junior Marines, privates, corporals, all watched, realizing that the woman in the royal blue shirt was no ordinary figure. Mason, still leaning, still pushing, didn't yet see the gulf between perception and reality. Christine's voice finally cut through, measured, deliberate. "Sergeant Mason, step aside. You are obstructing proper conduct. Failure to comply will have consequences." Every word was calm, low, resonant, carrying the weight of decades of service. Diaz's phone vibrated in his pocket, a reminder of the urgent call he had to make. He hesitated, torn between protocol and the need to prevent disaster. Mason's gaze darted around the hall now, noticing the shifting expressions of his juniors, the frozen stares, the murmured calculations of rank and consequence. Christine remained a calm anchor in the storm. Her breathing steady, her posture unyielding. Every inch of her body spoke of authority without aggression. The young corporal remembered from Ramani would have obeyed her command without question, not out of fear, but out of trust in her clarity and judgment. Mason, on the other hand, was flailing under the weight of invisible scrutiny. His chest heaved, his arrogance melting into confusion. A few Marines whispered among themselves, realizing the gravity of the situation. Someone familiar with the base, someone important, was standing there silently, waiting, assessing, not reacting. Christine's eyes scanned the hall again, this time briefly acknowledging Diaz with the faintest of nods, an imperceptible signal of awareness. It was enough for him to act. He rose swiftly, abandoning his tray, and sprinted toward the exit, fumbling for his phone, heart hammering with urgency. The sun outside glinted harshly on the pavement as Diaz ran, weaving between parked Humvees and the small clusters of soldiers heading to afternoon duties. His fingers shook violently as he dialed the number he knew he shouldn't call, but needed to. "Staff duty, Sergeant Higgins." His voice trembled. "Sergeant, you need to get the sergeant major to the mess hall immediately." Silence met him for a heartbeat. Higgins' voice, steady and measured, returned. "Why, what's happening?" Diaz's words tumbled out, urgent, fragmented. "Sergeant Mason is confronting a woman. She's in line. He shoved her. I think it's General Harper, sir. She's not a civilian." The line went quiet for a moment, long enough that Diaz feared he'd been dismissed. Then a sharp intake of breath. "General Harper, are you certain?" Diaz's eyes were already locked back on the mess hall doors, heart thundering. "Yes, sir. Look at her wrist, the memorial bracelet, the stance, the posture. It's her. Mason is about to make a terrible mistake." He could almost hear the chaos inside, feel it vibrating through the phone line. "Stay on the line," Higgins said. "I'm mobilizing command." The weight of inevitability pressed down. Every second counted, but Christine's calm still radiated inside, a quiet promise that authority and discipline would prevail. Back inside the mess hall, Christine adjusted her footing slightly, feeling the silent scrutiny of the room settle fully upon her. Mason was now visibly agitated, unsure, leaning too close, trying to assert dominance that had evaporated the moment Christine refused to react as expected. She didn't look at him directly anymore. Her gaze swept the hall, noting who was watching, who was frozen, who might act. The subtle movements of Marines around her told her more than words could. Diaz burst back through the double doors, phone pressed to his ear, urgency in every step. Mason turned, confused by the sudden movement, unaware that his audience was about to witness the full reveal. Christine finally lifted her head slightly, letting her calm but commanding aura fill the hall. Every whisper, every hesitant shift of weight, every frozen stare contributed to a building crescendo of tension. Then the sergeant major's boots clattered across the floor from the far entrance. Authority, unmistakable and immediate, entered the room. The air thickened, heavy with realization, as Mason's bravado collided with reality. Christine stood still, steady, a figure of quiet command. In the next heartbeat, the confrontation would reach its tipping point, and the lesson would be unmistakable. The room was suspended, a breath held, waiting for the inevitable. The sergeant major's presence shifted the room instantly. Mason's chest rose and fell, pride clashing with fear, arrogance replaced by a creeping realization. Christine's calm, steady gaze met the senior officer's, and in that silent exchange, the hall seemed to shrink. Every Marine felt the tension snap, a charged energy humming in the air. Mason's hand hovered uselessly near Christine, unsure, hesitant. The sergeant major didn't need to speak. The weight of his rank and experience filled the hall. Christine finally spoke, her voice calm but resonant. "Sergeant Mason, step aside. You are obstructing proper conduct." Each word landed like a chisel on stone, precise, deliberate, undeniable. Junior Marines leaned forward, their curiosity now edged with awe. Mason's face flushed red, a mixture of anger and humiliation. The room held its collective breath, the hum of fluorescent lights blending with the distant clatter of trays, the low murmur of shocked soldiers. For the first time, Mason understood he had misjudged not just the woman in front of him, but the invisible chain of experience and authority she carried. Silence stretched, pregnant with expectation. Every observer, young and old, understood something fundamental. Power isn't measured by size, chest, or rank alone. It is earned through courage, discipline, and unwavering presence. Christine Harper finally stepped forward, her tray now in hand, and placed it carefully onto the serving line. Her movements were deliberate, controlled, the quiet grace of someone who had faced far greater challenges than a single arrogant sergeant. The sergeant major approached Mason, a sharp glance exchanged, unspoken words hanging like daggers. Mason swallowed hard, stepping back, his shoulders stiff with the weight of realization. Around them, Marines whispered in hushed tones, connecting the dots, witnessing a profound lesson in humility and respect. Christine's eyes swept the hall once more, resting briefly on Diaz, whose phone remained clutched tightly in his hand. A flicker of recognition passed between them, an unspoken acknowledgement that she had survived, she had commanded, and she had led without a single shout. In that moment, the room felt suspended, a delicate balance between awe and relief, tension and resolution. The mess hall, once a battlefield of arrogance and misjudgment, transformed into a space where respect and authority quietly reclaimed their rightful place. Christine moved with calm precision, gathering her tray, leaving behind a ripple of introspection that would linger far longer than the lunch hour. Mason slumped slightly, realizing the scope of his mistake. He had attempted to dominate without understanding, to command without merit, to wield aggression instead of discipline. Around him, younger Marines absorbed the lesson silently, understanding the subtleties of respect, rank, and earned authority. Christine paused at the exit of the mess hall, one last glance at the room that had held her for only a few intense minutes. Her ponytail swayed gently as she moved, the quiet dignity of someone who carries invisible burdens with strength and grace. She remembered the faces of men in faraway lands who had depended on her calm voice to survive chaos. Here, in this polished hall, the stakes were different, but the lesson was the same. Integrity and presence outweigh aggression and assumption. Diaz let out a shaky breath, realizing he had witnessed something rare, a moment that would be spoken of quietly, reverently, among the ranks for years to come. The air seemed lighter, less tense, infused with the subtle awareness that authority, true authority, does not need to assert itself. It simply is. Christine finally exited the hall, the sunlight warming her face. The quiet triumph was not loud or boastful. It was contained, refined, profound. Junior Marines began to move again, conversations cautiously resuming, forks clattering on trays. Mason remained frozen for a long moment, absorbing the weight of the encounter, his arrogance replaced by introspection. Somewhere in the back of the room, a few soldiers whispered her name, half in awe, half in disbelief. Christine walked to the parking lot, each step deliberate, steady, grounded. The heat of the sun mirrored the internal fire she carried, a combination of experience, patience, and unwavering authority. She paused briefly, watching Diaz run to catch up, fumbling with words. A smile flickered across her face, subtle but genuine. It was the smile of someone who had weathered storms and emerged not just unbroken, but stronger. She allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. Leadership wasn't about recognition. It wasn't about being feared or admired. It was about standing firm when the world expected you to bend, about maintaining clarity in chaos, and about showing, without aggression, that true authority is a quiet, unshakable force. The base would speak of the incident quietly, behind closed doors, in hushed tones, not because it was scandalous, but because it was transformative. Every Marine who had witnessed the confrontation left with a subtle understanding of humility, respect, and the invisible power of calm authority. Christine Harper walked through the lot, the wind tousling her hair, the weight of her legacy carried lightly on her shoulders. She didn't need to declare victory. The room, the Marines, the lesson, it all spoke louder than any announcement. And somewhere, far in the distance, the faint memory of dusty courtyards, mortar rounds, and trembling soldiers lingered, a reminder of who she was and why she led. She smiled softly, the kind of smile that carried both sorrow and triumph, and continued toward her vehicle, each step a testament to the quiet courage that defined her life and her command. The mess hall was behind her, but the impact would ripple far into the future, carried silently by those who had witnessed the extraordinary truth of ordinary presence. If this story touched you, remind yourself that strength isn't always loud. It's quiet, patient, and unwavering. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and press the bell icon for more stories that inspire, heal, and remind us we're never truly alone.